to joy, spirit to spirit, lighted by your word, and with your bread of life.
Hello, 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 everybody. This is very, very, very great to have each and every one of you here. I see you all logging in. SA, Jennifer, great to have you all on board. Anoluwa, you're welcome. Perrydale, Preparatory, you're welcome. Biodo, you're welcome, you're welcome. Adam the King, I like that, you're welcome. Elizabeth Jill 13, you're welcome. Hello. Banger Speaks, you're welcome, you're welcome. I see Rolly. Welcome everybody, welcome everybody. It's so good to have each and every one of you on board, and my favorite person is on board already, so I'm going to ask her in. We're not going to waste time, we're going to dive straight into it. My name is John, and I will be having a wonderful time discussion with the superb, unique Miss Barlow. Okay, it promises to be a very interesting session. I'm going to invite her in. Great to see each and every one of you. Titi.
Hey!
Hello.
Hi! I'm so glad to be here. Oh my goodness.
Great to see you.
Thank you, John.
I've been looking forward to this. How have you been?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Struggling with.
Great.
Oh, I'm
Careful.
falling for you. Sorry.
It's very great. It's very wonderful to have you here this evening.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a very long time. Hi, Uche.
Yes.
Good to have you here. It's lovely
Yes,
to
I
see
see
some of my followers joining us.
Great. Yeah, Mrs. Okewo is here. I can see Mrs. Okewo joining us too. Great to see.
Wow.
Great to see everyone. Great to see everyone. Okay. This evening is just going to be a wonderful, warm discussion with this great personality. For those of you that don't know Miss Barlow, get ready. You're going to learn a lot. I'm telling you. She's got a lot to offer. And
I always
today,
say you're biased, John. You're biased.
Am I really? Am I?
You're biased.
I say it the way it is. So, but really, it's a wonderful one having you on board. What have you been up to? What have you been up to?
Well, I've been online. I've been promoting High Safety Experts. Good to see you. I've been spending a lot of time online. You know, obviously all the schools are closed down, so we've been doing lots of training. I've been doing some virtual coaching. I've been, you know, I've been trying to keep myself busy. I've been studying. I've been keeping myself abreast and keeping myself up to date. Yes. So it's been good.
That's the way to go. That's the way to go. I know you started at the beginning of the lockdown. You started with like an exercise thing that was helping a lot. It touched a lot of lives. Why?
Oh dear. Well,
I'm not saying that in a while.
We've kind of let that down a little bit. You know, COVID has added a few kilos here and there, I have to say.
All right, don't worry. I trust you. I know you handle all that later.
Absolutely.
Okay. So today we're talking about virtual learning, you know, benefits and opportunities, and you know, it's just there. It's catching up on us like all of a sudden. Okay, there's a common phrase now that the new normal. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yes,
the new normal.
Yes.
Okay. Straight away, I'm going to ask you, would you say the virtual learning is the new normal for education?
Well, I think for the time being, it is. I mean, schools, you know, from what I understand, the government has now given us permission to start third term in October. But it is staying online at the moment. Obviously, in secondary, the SS3 students are returning to some level of learning in preparation for their exams, which I believe have already started. So I don't think virtual learning is going away anytime soon. However, do I think that it's going to become our new norm in the long term? I would hate to think so. I would hate to think so, actually, because I don't think, and I think this goes for everybody that works in the education sphere, and also for parents, there's something missing from the virtual learning environment, and that is the nurturing and the development of social skills and the development of, you know, interaction and developing them socially. So I don't think it's going to be our new norm in the long term. I think it's a short-term solution to a pandemic, you know. It's a short-term solution to a pandemic, and it's where we are now. It's what we're stuck with. As I say, I don't think it's ever going to go away. I think there's lots of things that the virtual learning environment has brought to education, particularly here in Nigeria, but even in so-called first world and developed economies where they have the infrastructures, but they perhaps haven't used them as effectively, even in the West. Yes. So I think it's opened a lot of eyes to a lot of people, including myself.
Same here. I'm a disciple.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it's got a lot of people going back into, you know, the IT world, computer literacy, you know, and that for me is some form of learning, you know. So a big plus. Okay, well, how would you relate virtual learning to the 21st century learning skills?
Okay, well, if we look at what we perceive to be or what we've come to know as 21st century skills, there's the 4 C's. There's communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. Now, let's start off just looking at the virtual world and communication. Now, you may just about be old enough to remember this, just about, but you're younger than me, right? I remember around 25 years ago or thereabouts, I got my first mobile phone, and I was so excited. I thought I'd made it. I thought, this is it now. You know, no longer do I have to stand in a phone box and feed the coins into the phone. I got a new mobile phone, and it was a Nokia 3210, right?
Whoa.
And some people know that's a classic phone. I had a Nokia 3210. And I thought I'd made it. Now, 25 years later, we have mobile devices that are sometimes more powerful than our laptops. We have mobile devices where you are in Lagos, I'm in Abuja, and we're having a real-time conversation. We've had trainings and virtual meetings where you've got hundreds of people from all over the world communicating virtually. So in terms of why do we need to, you know, the virtual learning world has opened up a whole world when it comes to communication, and technology is not going to stop. So my question is, if 25 years ago, my reality, my new then was a Nokia 3210, and now, you know, we're using iPads, iPhones, we're communicating with people all over the world. 25 years from now, where are we going to be? You know, that's a big question. In terms of communication, where are we going to be? You've got businesses now. Some businesses stopped trading with the onset of the COVID because they were used to face-to-face communication. So once the lockdown happened, they physically stopped working and waited for it to be over. 5 months later, we're still in the same position. So communication, we have to find new methods of communication all the time. And communication means business communication, physical communication, using devices, having virtual meetings, and so on. So that's you know, virtual learning is opening a whole new plethora of opportunities for children to know and to learn about the communication in a different way. Then we look at things like collaboration. Now, to me, collaboration is something that we're learning new ways to collaborate. So, for example, in the real world, we can work on a project. You and I and your team in Meadowhall can work on a project, something like, for example, your school improvement plan, and we can all be working on the same document because of the virtual world, right? We've got platforms that we can put it into a cloud, and we can all be working on it, right? The same thing is happening in some schools with the virtual learning, in that information is being stored in a cloud. For example, students are being able to work on projects virtually, especially project-based learning, so they are learning to operate collaboratively. Then, you know, critical thinking goes without saying, because we've suddenly been plunged into a world where there's this pandemic. Everybody, there's nobody that has been excluded from this problem. Not one person, right?
That's true.
Schools learned on a Friday that they were going to close, or something like Wednesday or Thursday, that they were going to close indefinitely. And suddenly they had a problem that they had to solve. And you need those critical thinking skills. And it's not just the big issues like COVID-19 and the lockdown. It's teaching children to solve even the everyday problems. Like, what am I, you know, what am I going to cook? Where do I find a recipe to?
What do I put on?
Right. You know, so we need those critical thinking skills. And then finally, creativity. Now, creativity, one thing I have learned, and again, it's all been around this virtual world that we're in, is how creative app designers are. Anybody that is involved in technology, they must have a creative mind. And I've been talking to some app developers, and I'll tell them, you tell them what they want, and you can almost see them looking up, and they're almost painting and configuring a picture in their mind about how these applications are going to look like, what the coding is going to look like, and so on. So people need to be creative, even in the world of technology. So that virtual learning, and there's one question that when I was thinking about the topic for today, there's something that I thought about, and that's it, especially here in Nigeria. If education is supposed to prepare us for the real world, why are we not doing more of the real world in school? Good. So that's just my short summary of how I think 21st century relates to virtual learning.
You're very, very correct. For instance, myself, it's forced me to think way beyond. You know, initially it used to be thinking outside the box. You're thinking way beyond the box right now. You know, it's for a lot of things, for families, for kids, for finances, for so many things. And you can see it has forced people to come up with very new ideas on how to solve their problems.
Right.
You know, so it's done that much. You're very, very true, very true. So what in that line, what new thing have you come up with? Because I know you're always thinking, you're always creating, you're always creating. So what's new with Miss Barlow?
Well, I don't reinvent the wheel, John. I don't reinvent the wheel. I really don't. What I have found and what I believe is going to happen moving forward is that we're going to be moving, you know, you asked a question about the virtual world, and you also were sort of asking, do you think it's here to stay? And I said, I don't believe that that this is our new norm. However, what I do believe is that we're moving schools that are forward thinking, and of course I'm biased. I am thinking of Meadowhall because I work with you. So, you know, schools that are very forward thinking like yours will now beginning to look at your curriculum and think about when school does resume, and by God's grace, we find a vaccine for coronavirus. So therefore we can return to full-time school. My question will be, what is that new school going to look like? And I think it would be a real travesty if all that we've learned during COVID era and virtual learning is now put back in a box and left. Because what I've found, and this is in my conversations with lots of school leaders and lots of teachers, is that what they've gained and what they've learned is there is a wealth, there is a plethora of information out there. There are resources out there that you don't have to create. There's educational videos, there's educational worksheets, there's online application. There's so much there. So to go back to traditional teaching methods would be an absolute travesty. And I think children would kind of rebel a little bit against that. So for me, I think rather, and some people have talked about the flipped classroom. Flipped classroom basically meaning that, you know, that you literally do your homework in the classroom and you do your learning at home. I don't think that model is going to work in Nigeria, to be honest. But what I do feel could work in Nigeria is what we call blended learning, where you're using technology and you're using opportunities for children to maybe go at home, to start looking at a new topic from home, to do a bit of research, to do a bit of reading, to look at videos and so on, and then come in the classroom and have that consolidated. I think that is where forward-thinking schools are going to be moving in the future.
That's very deep. Why reinvent it when it's just there for the grabs?
Right.
That's very deep. But okay, with every technology, with every new idea comes the challenges. So what are the challenges we're about to, you know, face when it comes to virtual learning or the virtual world?
Okay, I think there are a number of challenges. And if we start with Nigeria, first of all, I think the first challenge that Nigeria faces is the constraints of its curriculum. If you simply look at the curriculum documents, which I've looked at in detail and at length, all of those 21st century skills that we talked about are not included in the Nigerian curriculum. Now, that is not to say that you've not got 21st century teachers that will use 21st century teaching methodologies to teach the Nigerian curriculum, right?
Yeah.
So there's some great teachers teaching in Nigerian schools using the Nigerian curriculum, but teaching it in a way that develops 21st century learners, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But if you simply take the document as it stands, it is just about knowledge and a little bit of understanding. You have to, you know your stuff, that it's full of content. And also the assessment method is all about testing knowledge and understanding. So I think that's one of the constraints that schools are going to have. Schools that are just following the Nigerian curriculum, the constraints of the curriculum is going to be one of the problems that you have. Then alongside that, the other constraints are things that we've all faced, such as internet, infrastructure. So let's consider, for example, we're supposed to be going back to third term from October online. Now, my question is, are all the public schools ready? Do they have the infrastructures to do online learning? So it's all well and good for independent schools, for the private schools, and for, should we say, the more well-to-do public schools. But what about that sort of primary school in the middle of the village? Are they going to have the wherewithal? Are they going to have the infrastructures? So then when we're looking at opportunities for all, where's the fairness in that? Those are the questions I ask myself, and therefore the constraints that, you know, that I see. I think other constraints might include training of staff. So, for example, you know, you've got project-based learning. Project-based learning is a fantastic vehicle for students to learn. They can work collaboratively, they can work in groups, they can do research and all of that. But my question is, teachers can only give what they have. Right. So if you have been raised in an environment where your teacher, when you were a child, it was all chalk and talk, that's what you give out. So unless schools, and I'm talking about whether it's public or private, are willing to invest in professional development, that's another constraint. You know, we've got, even if in the public sector the government is able to put the infrastructures in place, if you then don't support that with training and with professional development, it's not going to happen. You know, and I know Meadowhall, you put a huge emphasis on professional development. It's part and parcel of the expectations of any good school is professional development. If you want to be at the top of your game, you need to do professional development. And it's not just the responsibility of the school, it's also the responsibility of the individual professionals.
Educator.
So those are just one or two of the challenges that I think arise.
Okay. I like the fact that you talked about CPD. You know, it's the core of any, you know, educator's growth, you know, if you're going to look at it like that. If you were to pick by priority, and considering what's happening right now, what are those areas that you would probably lead teachers towards in terms of CPD?
You really shouldn't have asked me that, John, because that's not fair. The truth be told, it depends on the school. It really does depend on the school, because, for example, where I would start with you and your teachers at Meadowhall is a totally different place to where I would start with a local primary where they literally don't know anything about 21st century learners, you know? So I think it would be unfair to say where would you start, because I think it depends on each individual school. So where I would start with you is at a much higher level than where I would start with some other schools.
Okay. You know, across the board,
John, someone has just asked, for example, what is CPD? CPD is continuous professional development. Professional development. Thank you for that question, because we do use these acronyms and don't sometimes explain them. So thank you for that question.
Very true. Thank you very much for that question. Very relevant. It's your continuous professional development. I've got Dynamic Sphere explaining that. Thank you very much, Dynamic Sphere tutorial. Thank you. All right. So I just felt with a larger percentage of teachers with, you know, Android phones and the rest, IT and delivery online might just be one area they might want to, you know, pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Because there's no next phase without that.
Absolutely. And the truth be told, the reason I didn't start there is for the fact that most schools like your own have already been there, done that, got the t-shirt. You've already been involved in teaching online, using mobile phones, using devices to teach, to record. You know, I've learned how to do video editing. I can now design my own e-flyers, you know, and all of that. I've learned to use Canva. I've learned to use Google Forms. I've learned to so many things that I didn't know. Absolutely. So yes. Basic ICT skills and literacy skills are the basis for that's the starting point for any school. So a school, for example, that has been closed all of this time and hasn't engaged in any kind of in any form of learning, that's their starting point. Absolutely. It's those ICT skills, everything that we have had to learn very, very quickly, they are now also having to learn. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to take you back just slightly, and it's still going back to how do we get because it's something that's really on my mind,
Right.
so that no child is left behind.
Right.
What are the simplest measures that can be done to get the children in the public sector now, children in the public sector, to also benefit from this one way or the other? You know, it's not every one of them would have a laptop, not every one of them would have a phone. What are just some simple suggestions that could bridge that gap in terms of the virtual learning?
Well, to be fair, you, in order to deliver online learning, you need to have an online resource, whether it be a laptop, an iPad, or simply your mobile phone. And even if you started off, I mean, I was quite confused the first time that I heard that training was being taken place on WhatsApp. And I was like, how can you do training on WhatsApp? Really? But you know,
It's happening.
yeah, it's happening. And you can do little voice recordings, you can do little videos, and you can post snapshot videos of things and have people comment and everything. So the starting point could simply be, if you've got a phone that's got WhatsApp, start teaching using your phone. You know, it might sound very, very strange, but actually it's a starting point. But I really do think that this is where the government really needs to step in and needs to support schools in upgrading. So, for example, I know that here in Abuja, some of the schools here, private schools, actually got some palliatives the other day, and it was palliatives were rice and beans, and rice and beans. These were going to school owners of private schools, and some of the school owners were saying, why didn't you give us face masks and sanitizers and safety equipment, PPE, instead of rice? That, you know, so I think we really need to look at where we're going to put some of the resources and some of the funding. Some of it has got to go in health and safety. Some of it has got to be invested. The government really has to step up now and start investing. If they're going to meet the needs of all children, they're going to have to start investing on ICT infrastructures. You know, even if it's just, you know, mobile phones, iPads, that kind of thing, it's got to happen. It's really got to happen. And then look at how the poorest families can also access. So some of these big technology companies, MTN, Nine Mobile, all of these, how can they make data more accessible for the poorest families so that they can also engage? Because I do think that when we're talking about these things sometimes, John, we talk as educators who are working in the private sector, where you know, and we have to remember that no child is left behind.
Yes, and that's pretty big for me. That's pretty big for me. And you mentioned something about safety.
Yes,
that's going to be a big one now with the virtual space and the virtual learning. I know it's going to be a lot of, you know, a difficult time for parents, you know, monitoring, supervision. What are some of those things that we could look forward to in terms of safety online with respect to virtual learning, as it covers parents, it covers teachers, it covers even the government?
Well, obviously, whilst children are at home, they are as safe as they can be, or as safe as their families decide to keep them. Because I go to the market often and see children, no face masks, running around, interacting, and all of that. So that's why I say they are as safe as their families keep them. The challenge. So online is keeping our children safe. Online learning is keeping our children as safe as their parents keep them. My fear about going back, my fear about schools beginning to go back before there is a vaccine available, is that there are lots of people that are not taking COVID seriously because it's not affected them personally. And so I know in one school, they sort of the first reaction of some of these SS3 students is to rush up to their friends and start hugging them. Yes, they had their face masks on, and yes, they had their shields and everything else, but you can't stop children from being children. And my fear is the younger ones, how do you, as a teacher, the little ones come in, the first thing they want to do is to give you as the teacher a big hug. And
Yes.
then how is that child going to respond when the teacher's now saying, no, you can't do that? Yeah. So we've got to think of so many, I would not want to be in the position of the government right now and making decisions about children going back to school. I wouldn't, until there's a vaccine. Yeah.
That's true.
I think it's a really tough call. But, I think I think schools are making a really big effort to do things well and to keep children safe with, I've been into a few schools and been consulting with them on health and safety matters. And there's some schools doing some really great things, trying to keep their children as safe as possible. Yeah.
Based on that, because a lot of schools have started with their WIEC exams, that's year 12.
Yes.
And I know you've mentioned the challenges with the curriculum and the structure, initially. I was trying to paint a picture because I was discussing with one of the students, and I said, how would it look like if you guys had your WIEC virtually?
Wow.
How would that would really be nice. That would really be nice.
It would really be nice, but how do you even begin to monitor that? I mean, how do you even begin to monitor that?
Yes, and those are the challenges. I'm trying to bring that in to support what you said about we've moved forward now, and it won't be right for us to, drop all that we've learned and then go back to the way it used to be. So looking at how this can go further into universities and polytechnics and, every area. I know a lot of schools right now, they've opened up their schools, admissions in process, and students are having lessons online, virtually already. Okay, so how can, I'm still going back to the government, how can the government just tweak this, turn it around so that it works for everybody, not just primary, secondary?
A lot of the, my understanding is that JAM takes place online. Yeah. So if JAM takes place online, the centres that are also already doing JAM could also officiate the WIEC exams. There's no reason why those things can't happen, but there would have to be all manner of controls to make sure that malpractice doesn't take place, and that would be my challenge. And then how do you, yes, okay, you're doing things online. How do you draw diagrams, for example? Do you do illustrations? There would be constraints, but it's something to think about. Definitely something to think about.
Yeah. This process has helped me to look into some other, supporting apps, especially for a lot of the platforms that we've been using. So in terms of drawing diagrams and things like that, there are loads and loads of things online. Like you said, why reinvent? Right. They're already, it's just a case of them, merging it and coming out with the best product for everyone.
And as I say, the other constraint, John, is like I said earlier, is that not everybody is tech savvy. And, even our students that are supposed to cover ICT as part of the Nigerian curriculum, you've got graduates that come out of school and all they can do is type using Word. They don't know how to do PowerPoints. They don't know how to use spreadsheets. They don't know how to do all manner of other things. So, and again, that comes back to the curriculum, and it comes back to government, and it comes back to infrastructures. I saw a video online. It was quite, it was funny, but actually it was really sad as well. There was an IT teacher who was using a piece of paper with a keyboard on it and a stone as the mouse to teach ICT. So the children were using their fingers to type on this paper, act it out. And they were moving this stone that was on their desk. They were moving the stone around to simulate the mouse and show how the mouse navigates around the screen. It was the first response was to laugh, and then the second response was it was really heartbreaking, because I thought this is actually the reality of some children in
Yes, it
in
is.
in the world. Let's not just talk about Nigeria. There are other countries in the world where this is their reality. So it's quite sad.
Very, very true. Well, that's pretty deep. That's pretty deep. And it's the reality, like you said. It's the reality.
Yeah.
Still on safety, virtual learning and safety.
Yeah.
I know there are limits to how long a child can spend in front of the screen time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, so let's speak a little bit more about that, please. So that we've got parents that have, joined in, and, we've got educators, so that everybody knows. So that we don't say, okay, it's virtual learning, now place everybody in front of a screen, and then we're not considering age, we're not considering how long they spend in front of the screen.
I think when you're talking about younger children, there should be no more than about 10 minutes at a time on screen. I think that's the guidance that I've been working with. But I think even as adults, we need to consider how long we are online. In fact, I don't have them here, but I've actually had to start wearing my glasses to do online because I'm spending so much time online. So I'm beginning to feel the strain on my eyes. I'm getting old, of course, but
No,
so
yes. No.
I am. I just look young. You know that. So we do have to. You do have to think about the length of time that children stay on. And I think when I did some training a short while ago on blended learning, and I think they say that the optimum learning period for online is a video for secondary school children, is a video of not more than somewhere between 8 and 12 minutes. So if you're producing a video of more than that, it's too much. So there should be a video, maybe it can even be broken up. You can do sort of a 5-minute teaching and then say, now press pause and try these questions. So they can try those questions offline. Then you can say, now, press play, and then you can watch the next section. So it's not to say that you can only do 10 minutes or 12 minutes in a day, but you need to break up those periods where they're actually looking at the screen, because it does affect their eyes.
It does.
Yeah.
And same way with adults, the teachers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We start calling R another alphabet. R, sorry, that's letter. Oh, C. That's sorry.
Yes, yeah. No, it's really, really. We all need to be aware of the fact that we can have issues with our sight, with vision, with headaches. Screen time can have a really big impact on us if we're not aware of the symptoms and then back off and shut down. And I think that's the beauty of virtual learning, actually, is that unless you're doing a live lesson, if you're uploading videos, it means that children can do it as and when they are ready. Now, one of the constraints of going back to the traditional learning is you can't press pause or rewind with a teacher live. But when you've got a video, if you don't understand something or you were daydreaming, you can press pause, press rewind, and watch it again. And that's one of the beauties of virtual learning.
True.
When you're bored with the teacher, you can just fast forward.
I'm not listening to Mr. John again. Stop.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's really good. Once again, with respect to teachers.
Yeah.
With respect to teachers.
John, you said you had 4 questions. Now you're grilling me.
They're all coming from the same place. They're all coming from the same place.
Go on.
Don't worry.
I'm just teasing. I'm teasing.
All right. We can't overemphasize the place of safety, both for teachers and for the students.
Yes.
So looking at how schools can begin to think of how to tweak or walk around their timetabling.
Yes.
Yeah, because would that create some form of, support for teachers?
Are you talking about when we go back to blended learning, or are you talking about now with
now as a virtual class? Because what you've explained is how they can break it down during a lesson. You play the video for a while, they do the classwork, and then they go back to the video so that the screen time is well managed.
Yes.
But how can the school help, basically, in terms of the timetabling, so that that is more or less like it's an official. You can't teach beyond this time. So, for instance, what we did is that the teaching time, we had to reduce it such that it's safe for teachers and it's also safe for the students. What's your take on this?
I think it's about looking at the balance of, we talked about 21st century learning, and one of the things, one of the constraints that I see with, for example, the Nigerian style of teaching is that it's driven by content, and it's about what the children know as a result of the teaching that takes place. And I'm more interested, and 21st century is about teaching children to learn and what the children can now do as a result of the lesson that's taken place. So I think what you need to understand is that when you've given out some knowledge, it's what the students are supposed to give back to you is what they can do as a result of the learning that's taken place. So what can they do? So it's about things like project-based learning. It's about giving them activities that reinforce, consolidate, and challenge the students and their learning. So it's about that fine balance. And don't forget that we as teachers do not need to be the source of all knowledge.
Yes.
One thing that this virtual learning world has told us is that we are not the font of all knowledge. And actually, the children can go online. They can find things out themselves. They can look at books. And you see, this is, again, the beauty. Teachers are so used to relying on textbooks. They make their lesson notes from textbooks that the school provides for them. Well, if I've learned anything, and I think most Nigerian teachers in this pandemic season have learned that there is a wealth of materials beyond the textbook, and usually the information that's in the textbook is very boring and very dry. But when children can now go and watch videos, and instead of sort of drawing a diagram of a volcano, they can watch a video of a volcano in action.
Why draw when you can watch?
Absolutely. And they'll probably learn more from the video. Remember, we're used to watching televisions. They're used to, if they're privileged enough to have PlayStation or one of these game stations or whatever, they're used to interactivity. They're used to visual images. That's why that's why actually, although Facebook is still very, very popular, Instagram has become more popular because it's all visual. Snapchat is popular with young people because it's visual. So we have to realize that we need to have students going online, doing research, finding out information. Let's find out what they have learned themselves independently before we now build on that. And then what do they do as a result of learning? So it's that balance between teaching, between the students going away and doing research, and what do they now do to apply that knowledge to problem solving.
Very good. For those of you watching from home, I told you it is loaded. It is loaded. A moment spent with Miss Barlow is always loaded. There's so much. And don't mind the fact that she's saying no questions. She can dish it out all day. All right. I think we've talked a lot about the challenges. So what do we see? What's the future like for virtual learning? What's the future like?
I guess that question is very generic because if we're talking about schools like Meadowhall, you are already teched out. Your teachers are very well trained. You have learned a lot in the last 5 months about virtual learning. For example, how do you teach PE virtually? You've had to think very creatively about how to do that. I think it really depends on the resources of the school. It depends on the commitment of the school owners or the government, if it's a state school. The question is a big question, and you can't give one generic answer because it really depends on where the school is at. What I do think needs to happen is independent schools need to, there's some independent schools that shut down and did nothing because they felt that this will be over soon. And it's now that they are beginning to realize, with September looming and opening of schools is not going to happen, they're now starting to think, what do we do? What do we do? We don't even know if our parents are going to bring their children back. So there's a lot of panic. And I think what they need to do is to seek out schools like yours. And that's been something else that's been really, really positive in this season, is because we've all gone online, we now have access to, as educators, to collaborate, to learn from one another. So I've linked up with and had conversations with so many people that are professionals, that are school leaders, that are consultants, that are trainers, people that are more tech savvy than me. And I've been able to upgrade my skills as a result of this pandemic. And I think that's one of the things that, there are so many courses out there that are low fee paying or free that you can actually engage with. So for those teachers that have sort of sat back waiting and hoping that this is going to go away, I think number one, go online, go on YouTube, go and get yourself teched up, go and get yourself, learn how to use the applications on your phone, learn how to use your laptops, learn how to use social media, and whatever it takes, get yourself trained. Get yourself trained. It's absolutely vital. And, I think the other challenge that people are facing, John, and moving into the new term, September, October, whenever things open, is it is still going to be online. And we've got to realize that we're going to have over 9 months, at least, of virtual learning. Parents are tired. Children are tired. Teachers are tired. So, it's been tough. It's been tough. But and I think if I'm going to give anybody any advice at this stage in closing, is if you are tired, take some time out. Just take some time out of yourself. Switch off your phones, switch off your iPads, switch off your laptops, rest. Let your school leaders know that you're tired, you're exhausted. Even students, if it gets too much, if it becomes too overwhelming, switch the devices off. Let your schools know that your child's welfare is more important than actually attending a class at this moment in time. Because everybody, this has been a new norm for everybody, and it has been exhausting. And there's been times when I've had to spend 3 days offline, just literally lying on my bed, because this can get too much. Yeah, you can. It can just get too much. So,
you've got the body pain also.
We have
from sitting in one
position
for a long time.
Yes, we have to stay positive. We have to stay positive. We have to stay focused. We have to keep looking at what is coming. But okay, let me be clear. There's no point waiting for us to get back to normal, because we could be waiting for several months yet. We're still only in month 8. We've got another 3 or 4 months of online learning to go on before schools may open, or we may have a vaccine. So I think people need to be very, very cautious about sitting back and doing nothing. Use this time to upskill, to uptrain. Use this time. Parents need to use this time to really understand and get to know how their children learn, how their children think. First, bonding with their children, which I'm sure they've had time to do, but also understanding how they learn and how they think. And if there's one good thing I will say that's come out of all of this, is I've heard so many parents, including some of the Meadowhall parents actually, that said, I now have a new respect for teachers. Yay!
I'm telling you, if you can shout it at the top of the mountain.
We now have a new respect for teachers, because they are tired. They understand how do you keep a child engaged all day long, because they are struggling to keep them engaged for an hour. So
I hear it's calling in, how do you do it? How do you guys do it? You know, kudos to teachers all over the world. Well done, guys. Well done. Well done. Great job.
Well done.
All right. That reminds me. I got a couple of friends that are also into this virtual learning, and it's in infant school.
Okay.
Yes. How? I need your view on this. Infant school. You know, younger children from, let's say, from the ages of 3 upwards to maybe 4. Say 2, 3, 4. You know, how do we get them? How do we get them?
I think we have to remember that when we're talking about children at 3, 3, 5, 4, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
you're talking about singing, rhymes, letters, sounds.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about things that you can do using videos, using songs, using games, using interactive resources online, creating interactive worksheets where they can match the letter with the animal and so on. So I think it can be done, but I think, I have kudos to early years teachers. Kudos to early years teachers, seriously, because
I don't know how they do it.
I don't know how they do it in person, let alone in the virtual world. So kudos, wow. The rain is pouring down. I don't know if you can hear.
Okay, I can, slightly.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're running up. Like I said, it's always a blessing talking to you. It's always a blessing. You've been in Nigeria for a while, right?
5 years.
Yay.
5 years.
You know, there should be like an Olori in front of your name.
Did I tell you I had a proposal from a king in Delta State?
Whoa!
I said no.
Your Highness.
What am I going to go and do sitting in a palace in Delta State? Thank you, but no thank you.
But really, what other language have you tried out? You know, you've tried to, speak?
No wahala.
Yay! That's wonderful.
Apart from that, I'm afraid I'm a very British lady with a very British accent.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, but at least you have like a Nigerian name.
Yes, I do. Somebody gave me a Nigerian name, and it's a Yoruba name, Adiola, and it means crown. Adiola, and it means crown of wealth. So I received that. Adiola.
I think that's why the royalty came to you. I'm sure you knew your name was Adiola. That's very good. Very good. Okay, as we gradually begin to wrap this up, I know people have asked some questions that, some of the questions that have been, scrolled up here. How can government be a bit more subsidized data? And I know you touched on that slightly. I don't know if you want to, expatiate on that a bit more, just slightly. I know I've taken you out. Yeah, I know. So just
John, I think, I need to be very careful and remember that I'm a guest at the table. I'm a guest at the table. I love Nigeria with a passion, which is why I'm here. I believe that there's an awful lot to do in the education sector and in the education sphere. I do believe that, if we think about and we talk about the SDG goals, the target for 2030 is that 23% of the budget should be going to education. And at the moment, my understanding for Nigeria is that only 6% of the budget is allocated to education. So I think actually that's the starting point. Government needs to take seriously health, education, infrastructures. And there is so much money going around in the system. You find that's money for this and money for that and this action group and that action group. And there's lots and lots of money being siphoned off with, to do all manner of nonsensical, as far as I'm concerned, nonsensical research. And actually, our children are suffering. And they don't, sorry, I said I wasn't going to be judgmental, but they don't care because their children go abroad to study.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, the thing that I will say, and I'm not saying all politicians, and I'm not saying all levels of government, because I think there, in every sector, in every environment, there is the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I do think that there are endemic problems in politics in Nigeria that need to be addressed, and need to be addressed quite significantly for the sake of the next generation coming up, because otherwise it's just going to get worse. Those are just my views. I'm not going to say any more because I'll get myself in trouble.
No. No.
I will.
Well,
They'll
very
be
well.
putting me on the plane at the end of August when they
I don't think
open.
you're quite useful to us here. We don't want you going back there. Not you know, but you said it all, and you did hit the nail on the head. If they do sincerely take care of those aspects, the nitty-gritties, basically, I mean, we wouldn't have been in this position in the first place. We wouldn't have been here, you know.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
Yeah. That is great. That is great. Wow. Okay, so it's been a wonderful time. It's been a wonderful time. It's always been, you know, I know hanging out with you
It
has always
always
been.
is. I
There's
know.
so much, you know, and then you stepped into so many other things. You stepped into relationships. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I guess at the start of COVID, you know, obviously my online presence became a lot more.
Yeah.
I started working a lot more online and building my online presence, and I'm going to be really honest. I got really, really bored talking about education all the time, because, you know, as individuals, we are so much more than just educators. There's so much more. So Conversation with Carol, which is my other IG platform, was about the other side of Carol. You know, was about love, life, and relationships. So, you know, we talked about the challenges of parenting, we talked about marriage, we talked about relationships, we talked about, I had Reverend Laurie Idahosa, and we talked about cross-cultural marriages, and, you know, and I'm mixed race, so I was able to come from the children's perspective, you know, in terms of cross-cultural relationships. So yeah, that's the other part of me: love, life, and relationships at Conversations with Carol. So yeah,
it's wonderful. I try to keep up. I know there's a petition or something going on at Facebook. I think I saw that. Yeah. I've been following.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was. That was a petition in the UK for some.
Okay.
I think, is that the one where there's a young man, I think, who was critically ill in hospital, and you know that they were saying, look, you know, places of worship are opening, some schools are opening, all of these meeting places are opening, and we need to go and see our son or daughter who is in hospital. Allow us to wear the right equipment and to go and spend time with this person who was potentially critically ill. Not with COVID, I hasten to add. So yeah, that was one of the petitions that I was involved in. I signed and passed on.
Ever busy, ever impacting. It's always a pleasure to have you. It's always a pleasure to discuss with you. I'm going to ask you the final question, and the final question basically is how.
When am I coming back to Lagos?
You took that out of my mouth. You took that out of my mouth.
I'll be there very, very, very soon. Very, very soon. I need to come and check that you're all doing what you should be doing.
We are doing what we should be doing. All right. So with respect to virtual learning, how do you see it impacting career choice? Career choices for the students, career choices even for, because I see it changing a lot of the dynamics here. Go on, please.
Let me talk about two things. Virtual learning, in terms of the fact that now you can actually study abroad without going abroad. because you can actually do degrees, international degrees online, through virtual learning, which opens up huge opportunities that you can study. Even me, I'm looking to study in the UK whilst I'm still here in Nigeria.
Running out of time.
Okay. Oh
I think
God.
my time is up. Oh, I can talk to you forever. Thank you
See?
very much, Miss Barlow.